Hello everyone, this is Brian from Snapstream. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. In the meantime, for those of you that have joined already, if you could raise your hand in the GoToWebinar panel that you can hear me, that would be excellent. Once again, if you can hear me, just to test out the audio, perfect. Sounds like we're good to go on the other end. We're going to wait just a couple more minutes for other attendees to join, and we'll get started momentarily. All right, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on what time zone you're located in. Let's just do another quick audio check. If you can hear me, go ahead and raise your hand, please, in the GoToWebinar panel. Perfect. So a couple of housekeeping tips before we get started here. You'll notice that there is a few different handouts in the lower portion of the panel. Those are resources for you to take away with you, for you to take a look at as references, and I will kind of allude to those as we go through the webinar today. In addition, there's a section for questions. I do encourage you to ask any and all questions that you have about Snapstream EDU. The more interactive this is, the more that we're catering to your needs, and you're probably asking something that other attendees on the call were thinking, but they just didn't ask it quite yet. So I'll try to make sure to get to your questions periodically and provide the appropriate responses. In addition, we will be going through a few poll questions as well during this presentation. And so if you could participate in those, it would be great feedback to understand a little bit more about the landscape of who we're working with today. All right, so with that said, my name's Brian. I am the Snapstream EDU account manager. And today we're going to be talking about streaming a variety of video content to the classroom and beyond. Now, before we jump in too much further, I'm going to put up our first poll question, and it's just a pretty basic yes or no inquiry here. Do you have any sort of IPTV solution currently? If you're unsure if you do, then that probably means that you don't. So looks like we have about a 70-30 split here, which about a third to a quarter of folks do currently have something in place, and the rest of you are exploring for the first time, which is great as well. So let's talk about who we are. As a company, we're a team of about 30 that have a lot of fun, also work hard. We work with a variety of different education customers, as you see indicated here on the screen. Everything from large 100,000 student public school districts to small private entities. We also work very heavily with government and entertainment sectors as well. All shapes and sizes are a good fit for our product. Let's talk a little bit about distributing announcements. So in the older days, such as when I was going through school, the traditional method was either just over the PA or on CCTV, clunky devices hanging from the corner of the room, maybe TVs on carts, etc. Those tend to pose a problem, and they're not the most scalable going forward from a technology standpoint. Because it requires a lot of infrastructure to be deployed as you are scaling out new buildings and revising buildings that have existed for a while. You need coax drops and things of that nature, and that's assuming that that you're incorporating video content already or looking to. In many cases, the intercom setup was the way of the world, and there are some limitations, obviously, to that, just in terms of engagement and making best use of time. The transition, for the most part in this industry, has moved to something called IPTV. So for those of you unaware, essentially that refers to distributing content over your local network from a centralized infrastructure out to the end users in various buildings and classrooms throughout the organization. Morning announcements are a very easy process with Snapstream. It's as simple as inputting or ingesting a camera feed or some type of mixer or switcher, taking the output from whatever that production operation is, and feeding it into a Snapstream encoder, and then that encoder sends that feed to a centralized server, which then gets distributed out over the network. We're going to look at a product demonstration later on, and all this will become crystal clear in terms of the end user interface and how simplistic it is. So another poll question here: how do you currently distribute TV and announcements? Couple options, or maybe some internet-based setup, IPTV, coax, or maybe there's another solution that you're working with. And as the results come in here, it looks like there's actually quite a few people reliant on the internet. That, you know, there are plenty of resources out there that allow you to accomplish some of these things. You're also making access available outside of your ecosystem. So it can lead to bandwidth concerns. It can lead to, you know, a lack of being able to monitor what exactly the content is that's being viewed. So sometimes those are considerations that schools give to creating something that's really contained within their environment. So how does SnapStream work? I described this briefly a minute ago. But at a high level, we're taking a variety of different broadcast sources. It may be TV connections. It may be a camera feed from morning announcements. It might be other in-house produced content, or even a DVD player. And all those different sources can be ingested into the SnapStream EDU server. Depending on the size of the deployment, that either the server either resides at the campus level, or it resides in a centralized data center, and then those streams are sent out over the network to the variety of different end destinations. So one of the beautiful things about IPTV is the scalability factor. So you can consolidate a number of different ways that schools and end users are accessing content. Everybody is using the same platform. It's very intuitive and very easy to troubleshoot if there's any issues occurring, because it's one central solution for everybody. At the production level, once again, here just a couple of illustrations about the hardware that's involved. So to be clear, SnapStream EDU is a hybrid. That's a combination of both hardware and software. So the hardware that's needed in your environment is that server, as well as a portable or stationary encoder, which is taking in the camera feed or any other type of media feed, and then that is powering the streams that the end user is seeing. The platform setup is intended for a static configuration, and what I mean by that is each source is dedicated to a particular channel. And so therefore you need the same number of sources equal to the number of feeds that you're distributing out. So for example, if you have cable boxes, you would need 3 cable boxes in order to distribute 3 channels of broadcast TV. Likewise with cameras or DVD players, what have you, the tuning that's happening inside of the encoder it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So the lineup pretty much remains the same. Now, if you have a switcher or something of that sort that you're toggling between different camera views and things like that, that's a totally separate conversation. We're simply taking in the end result of whatever that feed is into our encoder, and that's what's getting piped out over the system. Just a quick reminder, if you do have any questions, please send them over. I'll continue answering some of them as we go through this. We also have a set-top box. the Snapstream TV set-top box can extend out the viewing experience, typically outside of the classroom in common areas like a cafeteria, lobby, or library is where you would see these devices set up. These are accessories that talk back to the server and connect via HDMI to the back of a TV display. So you can pull up any live and or recorded content using these set-top boxes, either via a remote or via a web interface to where you could pull up content basically from the principal's office or from centralized location and say, I want all these displays to be showing X, Y, or Z at a given time. Here's a view of the set-top box. The interface looks a little bit different than our traditional web interface does, but you can see here that I can pull up any sort of recordings that have been made, pull up any assets that are in particular folders, or watch content live as it's happening. And then this is a view of what I was referring to in regards to, controlling set-top box at a controlling the boxes at a centralized level without having to actually be in front of the device. One of the biggest keys to our platform and the reason that we get implemented in the K-12 segment is because of ease of use. So as basic as that sounds, it is one of the crucial components to evaluation of technology in school systems. Things are fast-paced. There's all kinds of technology that's being rolled out and that you can decide between. And if it's not intuitive, scalable, and a very easy learning curve, then it's not going to get used. And over and over again, that's been one of the big factors that has separated Snapstream from other options in the marketplace, is we really pride ourselves on ease of use. And that'll be more clear once again in a few minutes when we actually go into the interface itself and you see exactly what an end user would be looking at. Yeah, there's a question about cost, and obviously that's always something that comes up at some point in the dialogue. I will touch on that towards the end of the conversation. So thank you for asking. So I alluded to this previously, but we're not just about live content. We can also do recorded content as well. So it operates as a live distribution mechanism as well as having DVR functionality. And all the icons on this particular slide are to illustrate that we're really flexible because of being HTML5 compatible, that our web player works within any sort of browser and any sort of device. This, once again, is an extremely important topic to point out because different school districts and different campuses have all kinds of different device and browser preferences, and there would not be any hurdles when it comes to that, where we can work across a variety of different platforms. You can also clip and share content. So when you're watching something, if you come across a particular segment that you want to extract out, that can be downloaded. It can be incorporated into different LMSs or curriculum portals. And this is a big factor because time is valuable. And maybe you don't have 5 minutes to show something in its entirety, but maybe you have 30 seconds to illustrate a point as it relates to that day's lessons. And Snapstream makes it very quick and easy to pull that information in. The third pillar that I like to talk about, in addition to distributing things like morning announcements, as well as broadcast TV content, is using SnapStream as a media server or digital repository of sorts. So you can upload any sort of video assets and categorize those into applicable folders, whether it's professional development or holiday play or particular lessons, what have you. The server comes with a scalable amount of storage, and this is a centralized place in which everybody can go to access that content. There's also ways to specify who has access to each of these folders, and we'll get to that momentarily. So I think that's a pretty good overview at a conceptual level. Let's go ahead and take a look at what the product does in action. So we're going to jump into my desk rather than your desk and pull up a system that's operating out of our office here. So what we're looking at here, and let me go ahead and actually just log out if I can to give you an illustration that there is a login process to this system. I happen to be operating this demo out of Firefox right now, but as I said before, whether it is Chrome or any other browser or any other device, it's going to work just the same. So the view that I'm going through right now is from more of an administrative perspective. I preface the demo by saying there's a number of different things that SnapStream's capable of doing, and there's no different tiers of service. So our product is what it is, and you get everything associated with it. If it's applicable to you, or if you choose to use it at a later date, that's totally your choice. But there's no add-ons that are needed. So everything that I'm going through, you also have access to do these things. I'll start out in the program guide, and I've created a customizable program guide. In this case, I've got 9 different channels, I believe. 8 of those are broadcast TV content, and they span things from local affiliates to History Channel, National Geographic, and ESPN. When you create your program lineup, at an administrative level, you are choosing what is going to be viewable to the end user. So it's a hand-picked lineup, and when I sign in to this system, these are the options that I'm capable of viewing. Nothing more and nothing less. In addition, you see the stream at the bottom. It's a mocked up channel here called EDU Live Feed. And just like all the other icons indicated by the red dots, any of these feeds can be watched live or recorded and viewed for playback later. So if I go ahead and click into my live EDU feed, it's going to populate here, and it's going to play this feedback. This is a camera view actually looking out over the downtown Houston skyline. Conceptually, that's no different though than the camera that would be in your broadcast studio that your students, teachers, or administrators would be broadcasting from. So it's an internal stream. It plays back seamlessly. And you can have any number of these internal streams set up at various campus locations to be accessible just as I pulled that up. Now, one thing that I'll point out, this gets into a little bit more of a technical conversation, but this is actually playing back through VLC player because this particular stream is multicast. Multicast means that it's one stream regardless of the number of end users. By comparison's sake, if I come into this channel right here, you'll see that it's playing back in this internal video player, and that's always going to be a unicast stream. These unicast streams are only for on-demand playback. The multicast is only live. Multicast isn't a requirement, but it's something that is often considered for bandwidth purposes. So pretty straightforward here. It's really as simple as coming into the guide, selecting which feed that I want to view, and then I come in and I watch that feed. Now you see a couple of other things going on here, and I'm just going to pause this for a second. So the video feed is on the left-hand side, but we're also pulling in the associated closed captioning along with this video content. This is something very unique to SnapStream, but a pretty powerful tool as well, which allows you to comb the entire closed captioning indexing to find specific needle in the haystack mentions of anything that you're looking for. So if I were to come up here and do a search in my library, once things have been recorded for NASA, I do that search and it returns me results right here, right? So it takes me straight to the point of where it's talking about this NASA spacecraft going into orbit. Likewise, if I was looking for stuff related to Abraham Lincoln, or if I was looking for stuff simply related to my campus or my superintendent or names of particular schools, all of that can be sifted through and those needle in the haystack mentions found through the search capability of the closed captioning. Now, to be clear, it does require that closed captioning. So any content that you are pulling in that's being produced internally, more than likely something like morning announcements or something like professional development will not have closed captioning associated with it. We do not do the closed captioning ourselves. We simply, it has to be done externally, and that file is pulled into the system, and that's how the power of the search capability takes place. So I can search within a program. I can search within the entire library. I can search, or let's say that I want to know about a particular mention all of the time. I can also come over here to my alerts section, and I can set up an alert. So just to go with a local example, let's say that, here in Houston, I'm setting up my HISD alert, and I can send this to whoever I want to at whatever frequency I want to, and I can say every morning or just weekdays, perhaps, at 8 a.m., I want to be notified when HISD is mentioned. I want to be notified when the Bobcats are mentioned, and I want to be notified when Mr. Jones is mentioned. And I'm going to get all the results for that terminology that's important to me delivered to my inbox at whatever frequency I've scheduled. These alert notifications can be set up by any scalable number of users. So if there's, if my history teacher has a certain need and then the communications department wants to be notified of other things, totally doable. You notice this tab at the top here that mentions YouTube. So a couple of things about any external sites. 95% of SnapStream EDU is contained within the organization and to the local network. That's done on purpose. However, there are a couple of ways in which you can post things to the outside. So it has to be it's coming from SnapStream and getting posted outwards. There is not a direct way to import content from the internet into SnapStream, although you could download it to your workstation and then import it into SnapStream from there. So if you had a YouTube channel, for example, that you wanted to take some sort of content and post it out to, you could do that. It simply has to be recorded content and going in an outbound direction. If we come back over to the library, you'll see that there is this upload functionality. So I can pull in any sort of media file that I want. I can grab that, say that I want it to go to a particular folder, and then that content is uploaded into the system. Like I said, there's storage associated with the SnapStream server, so that content actually lives on the SnapStream appliance that's tied to your network. You can also choose to tie SnapStream to some external storage if you needed to offload things over time. And now moving over to the admin section, there's a couple of things that I want to point out here. The first is regarding external accounts. So you can authenticate a YouTube channel. There's also some other third-party platforms that we integrate with, whether it be Google Drive or Dropbox, etc. And then under security, many of our customers use something like Active Directory. So this can be set up to map over different permission settings and user groups that you already have in place within your environment. And then each of those users, so this administrative user is assigned to group administrators. This person, who is actually a username that I've created, is assigned to the group live TV viewers. And then each of those groups is associated with having access to different functionality. So whether someone is able to post something out to your YouTube channel, whether they're able to delete content, whether they're allowed to upload media items, or a wide variety of other things, is very customizable based on the administrator's setup of the system. And this is also what you would use in order to point people to certain lineups. So using the permission settings, you can say that elementary school number 1 is going to get feed such and such, and then the other elementary school is only going to get their feed. So the entire duplicated lineup does not have to be the same for everybody. That can be customized based off of those groups as well. So piggybacking off of those groups, just to give you an understanding, there's likely not a reason for every user to see this entire view. This is more of a behind the scenes administrative level view. So I can sign out here and I can sign in as somebody else. And now you see, because I signed in under a different subgroup, I only see the guide and the library. And this particular user would not have rights to do recordings. They wouldn't have rights to do a lot of things. I've stripped away the access that's not relevant, for whoever this user is. Are there additional questions now that I've had a chance to go through the interface a little bit more? Let me talk about, well, before I do that, I've got a few additional questions for the attendees. So let me post our next poll question here. And this is to understand, how it would be, how you envision using it. So it looks like it's a pretty even cross section between broadcast TV and internal content. Let's talk about the platforms and the options that are available and how SnapStream gets sold. So the SnapStream in general is not the business model is not a licensing based one. So it's more based on our pricing is based off of hardware configuration. So there's an upfront hardware cost, and that's scalable, and it really depends on each individual use case. So that's probably a conversation that we would want to take off record and discuss for individual needs. But at a high level, there's an upfront hardware cost, and then there's a recurring 15% support and software contract, and that's a percentage of whatever your total hardware cost is on an annual basis. So there are a couple of different platforms depending on the size of the organization. So there is a school level option and a district level option. We found that most people, unless it is purely for school purposes, end up evolving into using it at a larger level because it gains traction and it's being implemented. And so, numerous schools want to utilize it. So that's probably like the best I can say about cost at this point. Is at a bare minimum, the part that's kind of fixed in terms of what you would need is the server. So let me actually pull up our website for a second. It'll give more clarity to what I'm explaining here. If we look at this diagram for a second, you'll see that in the blue box, there is a SnapStream EDU server. This is not a variable aspect of the deployment. Everybody needs this. So this is something that's being purchased, and then the variable component, it relates to the number of encoders that are needed. So each of the encoders on the server, as well as any encoders for broadcast TV, are rack mountable appliances, and then the smaller encoder that lives at a campus level for a camera feed, that is much smaller, more of a set-top box size. So EDU server and the encoder for taking in TV sources, those are either 1U or 2U rackable appliances, and then this is more mobile in nature at more of a studio level. Other questions? So I didn't mention yet, we do proof of concepts. Just putting it out there, just pretty much a black and white inquiry here. Are you interested in doing a proof of concept? What this involves typically is we get a little bit more information from you. We put together enough of a solution to basically execute what you're trying to prove, and work with you to get everything connected from an IT standpoint, then go from there. It's usually about a 30, maybe 45-day evaluation process, and it typically results in realizing that it works in your environment, etc. And then the last question I have is, what does your time frame look like for a solution like SnapStream? There is, for those of you that do have an interest, just to go over what the handouts look like, there's a couple of case studies that I've posted. These will give really great insight into how some of our customers are benefiting from SnapStream. There's a little bit more product information, and there's also a proof of concept form and a questionnaire that are helpful for us to get some of the basic information from you. So I'll definitely be reaching out to each of you as well to discuss next steps. It's never too early to lay the groundwork for things. If you have any additional questions, my email is very simple, just firstname@snapstream.com. Direct line to me is also listed here. And we'll definitely be in touch and talk about next steps. Yeah, there's a question here about morning announcements. Absolutely. So this could certainly be used just for morning announcements. There's various functionality that's associated with it. There is a cost, obviously, to the solution, and that's just something we would have to talk through and see if that's a fit for your environment. Because there's a server that you've got to commit to, it certainly becomes, it makes sense to look at maybe sharing that server with multiple campuses, but we do have, we for sure have individual schools using the solution for announcements purposes. thank everybody for their time today. We will be sending out a recording of this later on this afternoon. And if you got any other questions, definitely send them my way, and we'll be talking to you very soon. Have a great rest of your day.